Good morning, Nigeria, and thank you for joining us on a Daybreak this morning. We appreciate the fact that you decide to tune in to the show every weekday to, have a bit of a idea of what will be happening in the course of the day. It's a beautiful day, a beautiful Monday morning, and a fresh week, by the way. I'm Dasha and Husseina Usman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Indeed, a beautiful Monday morning it is. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust TV.
Good morning, Ibrahim.
Good morning, Dasha. It's a new week, brand new beginning.
Did you get cash? Very important. Cash is actually like gold these days.
I think that's the most asked question these days. I mean, like, do you have cash? Where can I get cash?
Very important.
Exactly.
And when people actually see you flashing cash on social media, the next thing is, please, can I have some?
Well, why would you flash cash on social media? That is the question to ask. Why would you flash cash on social media?
Because you've not seen it in a while.
So rub it in other people's faces that don't have?
Not really. You've not seen it in a while, and just seeing it and touching it.
Then you touch it and hold it and feel it for yourself.
You need to let people
do you
know
have
that
to rub it in?
cash.
No, you really do not have to rub it in.
After 2 months, you finally get cash. Wow.
You don't have you don't have to rub it in. Just celebrate by yourself.
Oh my goodness. All right. I pray that anyone looking for cash this week, because there are lots of people who depend on cash to actually go to work.
Exactly.
I actually saw a story of an OAP, an on-air personality in Ibadan.
Exactly.
Yes, who slumped and died after trekking to work because he didn't have cash. So it's really, really sad. But then I hope anyone looking for cash, this week finds it in abundance.
Definitely.
By the way.
We hope that happens.
All right, so let's take a look at the highlights at this hour. Naira redesign. Obedience to court could trigger anarchy. ACF warns Buhari.
And for insecurity, police rescue 14 kidnapped victims.
School poisoning. More than 100 arrested in Iran.
All right, now it's time for us to take a look at the details. The Arewa Consultative Forum has warned that the continuous disobedience to the Supreme Court judgment regarding the use of old Naira notes could lead to the breakdown of law and order. Now, in a statement, ACF Secretary General Murtala Aliyu agreed with the state governors who sued the federal government over the policy. He said the current approach of the Central Bank of Nigeria raises concerns about the respect for the civil liberties and rights of Nigerians as it relates to their freedom to use legitimately earned income as they so wish. He, however, lamented the huge crowds and long queues formed around bank offices and ATM points across the country as people struggle to get the new cash, which has remained extremely scarce and has triggered riots and other forms of civil unrest.
All right, away from that story, the Zamfara Police Command has dislodged a bandits camp and rescued 14 kidnapped victims who had spent 68 days in captivity. This is contained in a statement issued in Gusau on Saturday by the Police Public Relations Officer in the state, SP Muhammad Shehu. According to him, police tactical operatives in conjunction with the vigilante group, while on a mop-up operation near Mahai Forest, successfully dislodged some bandits camp belonging to one recalcitrant bandit kingpin popularly known as Dogo Saleh. The victims informed the police detectives that on 1st January 2023, at about 11 p.m., a large number of suspected bandits armed with sophisticated weapons stormed Angwar Mogoro and Gidam Maidawa villages in Gusau local government area and abducted the victims to their camp, where they spent 68 days in captivity. He said the State Commissioner of Police, Kolo Yusuf, has congratulated the victims for regaining their freedom and reassured of the command's continuous commitment to protect lives and property of the citizens.
Iran has announced more than 100 arrests nationwide over the mystery poisonings of thousands of schoolgirls, charging that the unidentified alleged perpetrators may have links with hostile groups. In the wave of cases since late November, schoolgirls have suffered fainting, nausea, shortness of breath and other symptoms after reporting unpleasant odors on school premises, with some being treated in hospital. State media reported late on Saturday that the Interior Ministry had announced the arrest over the suspected poison attacks in more than 200 schools and have sparked fear and anger among pupils and their parents. Among those arrested are people with hostile motives and with the aim of instilling terror in the people and students and to close down schools. The ministry added that fortunately from the middle of last week, the number of incidents in schools has decreased significantly and there have been no reports of sick students. The statement pointed at possible links to an Albania-based exiled Iranian opposition group that Tehran considers a terrorist organization known as the People's Mujahideen of Iran.
All right, and with that, we will move on to more stories. As the rainy season approaches, youths in Benue have been urged to engage in agriculture to earn livelihood and assist others in Nigeria's economy. Jimmy Adzande reports that residents believe farming is a big business and should not be taken for granted.
It is the season of politics in Nigeria as political parties and supporters across board tighten up for the governorship election on Saturday the 18th. However, experts in the agricultural sector want youths across the country to own farms for their benefits and the growth of the economy.
My call to youths is that we need to join hands together to build the economy of this nation. It's not just about politics. When the politicians are doing their own, the youths also have to be equipped to support the policies. Governments and business owners or entrepreneurs come together to massively encourage the economy. So we are calling you to come into the agricultural sector. This season is almost upon us. Let them get farmlands. There are inputs, there are many credit facilities that can encourage and help them to carry out a farming, so that at the end of the season they'll have something to show for themselves, for their community, and for the nation at large.
Others said with agricultural produce, the youths can feed their families after politicking. Instead of stipends from political masters, the youths are advised to seek for agricultural incentives from the political leaders to engage in large-scale farming.
My advice to young people is that they should go back to farm because this is the time for farming, and we need the young people. In the farm, we need young people more than the way the politicians they need them, because after politics, we have to eat. So we need to take them back to farm so that they'll be able to produce what even the politicians they will eat. If youth happens to know the value of farming, they will know that even the politician depends on this farming. The reason why you are following politicians should be that this politician may help you, assist you in getting farm inputs, assist you in making policies that will be favorable for you to farm.
The experts maintained that the economic benefits of farming are enormous and should be taken serious by both the government and the youth population.
I told the young coming youth that there is no business that can give you money like farming. Politics is a waste of time to myself. I believe in farming more than any other business because there is no business that will give you what farm will give you, as far as I'm concerned.
There have been calls for food security in Benue State, reputed as the food basket of the nation. The experts said more hands are needed to mitigate the food shortage last famine season caused by flood disaster in Benue, amongst other states in the country.
And to politics now, where political alignment is getting intense in Katsina State ahead of the governorship and State House of Assembly elections. Abdullahi Ahmadi reports that some political parties are aligning or merging with the two major political parties in the state to either retain or wrestle power. His report.
It is obvious that the PDP and the APC are the major political parties struggling to make it to Muhammadu Buhari House come March 18th. Though the People's Redemption Party, PRP, is curiously following the turn of events with keen interest, having presented a credible person who many believed is in the contest to win the election. The three candidates of PRP, PDP, and APC continue to re-strategize to bridge all gaps ahead of the next Saturday's elections. Part of these strategies is how APC was able to persuade a faction of PDP under the former governor Ibrahim Shema to support Dikko Radda during the next Saturday's elections. In the same vein, chieftains of NNPP and Accord Party collapsed their structures to support the ruling APC in Katsina State. We at the NNPP were into this alliance with the governorship candidate of APC, Dr. Dikko Radda, to support him win the next Saturday's election. Katsina State requires an educated person to take it to the next level. That is why we support Dr. Diko Umar Da, and he will win the next Saturday's election, God willing. Similarly, the Labour Party just recently collapsed all its structures in support of the PDP governorship candidate, Senator Yakubu Lado Damariki.
After thorough deliberation, discussions, and consultations, we were able to come up with distinguished Senator Yakubu Lado Damariki of the People's Democratic Party as the best candidate for the forthcoming election in Katsina State.
Democracy gives room for multi-party system, but that the campaign teach or try to show that we want to become a one-party system, especially here in Katsina. So that one-party system does not help the democracy. Does not help. But if you want progress, or if you want benefited more from the government, so there is need for us to have a opposition.
This is coming at a time the APC and the PDP are trading words, accusing another of planning to rig the forthcoming elections in the state. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
All right, welcome back. Away from that particular story, with the postponement of the governorship and state houses of assembly elections, many political parties have intensified their campaigns, while some collapsed their structures to join others. Now in Adamawa, the one-week extension creates chances to the main leading political parties, headed by Governor Amadou Umaru and Senator Aisha Binani, to receive defectors to their camps. Now Silas Long files in this report.
The one-week extension of the election by the Independent National Electoral Commission has provided an opportunity for the parties to make further effort to win the hearts of the masses. It will be recalled the Labour Party governorship candidate in Adamawa, Umar Mustafa, joined the All Progressive Congress to help its candidate wins the election. Few days later, People's Democratic Party Central Zone aspirant Abubakar Ibrahim Gombi also joined the Binani scam. They both call on their supporters to unite and ensure victory is for Binani.
I am specifically saying all my supporters, all means all my supporters should come out en masse and vote for Senator Aisha Binani.
It has always been my desire for this, my brother from my uncle, to join me and support me in actualizing my ambition. And today is a difficult day. And asking what value will this add to this journey? Certainly, I'm sure whoever sees this combination today, I'm sure the opposition will be shaken. They know that APC.
For APM, ABGA, NRM, ZLP, ADP, and APP gubernatorial candidates, moving to Governor Ahmad Umar Fintri's camp is best choice. While on his part, the Adamawa State Action Alliance gubernatorial candidate Suleiman Tahir vehemently debunked rumors going round of his stepping down for Governor Ahmad Umar Fintri.
And I hereby state vehemently, unequivocally, that I'm still in the race for the governorship of Adamawa State. And I will never, and I have no intention whatsoever to align with any other party.
Now, both APC's Aisha Binani and Governor Ahmadu Umar Fintri of the People's Democratic Party have been visibly involved in the campaign in several places, including churches, markets, and streets, trying to woo as many voters as possible. Salis Lawan, Trust TV News, Yola.
Now, it is the responsibility of government to provide infrastructure to make life meaningful for its citizens, and it is equally the citizens' responsibility to protect the infrastructure to provide for their welfare. Now, People, however, often vent their anger by destroying public infrastructure. Kabir Lawal speaks to Abuja residents on whose responsibility it is to protect public facilities.
Of public infrastructure is the sole responsibility of government. But citizens vandalize public facility like electrical installations, rail track, or manhole for selfish reasons. A cross-section of people that spoke to Trust TV News said the destruction of public property can be attributed to ignorance, hunger, poverty, and frustration.
My advice is to the young people, please, no matter what, we shouldn't resort to violence. Let's not destroy public properties, be it government or private. Please, there are better ways to channel our grievances. So it is better with dialogue than destruction, because it will still cost us to recover from those destructions.
Government does not respect the rule of law, and we don't think you don't expect any common youth out there to come and respect your own rule, that you don't respect the rule of law. Me, on my own, I always talk about I look at the positive ends of things a lot. You understand me? But government of today does not know if the youth are existing or not. You understand? Imagine if you can call the president of Nigeria to come to court and he said nothing like court. The Supreme Court will give judgment based on our naira to be legal, and the government will say nothing. So we don't respect rule of law, so we don't expect anybody to respect the government.
Some said the youth should channel grievances through the appropriate authority and not to resort to destruction or looting of public property.
Do the right thing. No job. All our foreign jobs are recruiting to Ghana. Everything, mobile, Toyota. Oh, Ghana, so what are we doing?
This is not far from the reality of the changing climate and the heat wave. All of this make people to behave differently. Let's stay calm and trust something better will happen in the nearest future.
Respondents implore the youths to be vanguard of public assets, calling on government to provide job opportunities for them to be more productive. Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, with this, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, it'll be time for the newspaper review. Stay with us.
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130...
Created a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Or really, if you look at England squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
But in a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak this morning. Now we'll take a look at the stories on the front pages of the dailies, and we'll begin with Daily Trust newspaper. The lead story here says 48 days after Buhari's committee fails to end petrol scarcity. We have writers that say subsidy gulped 2.4 trillion naira in 6 months. Motorists buy at 300 naira per litre in Kaduna. Others presidency mum riders, and we have a pictorial of fuel queues at filling stations in Abuja, Nasarawa, Lokoja, and details of the story will be found on page 4. PNID, Nigeria's $11 billion trial ends with alleged massive bribes and missing witnesses. You can find details of that story on page 35. At the top of the page there, governorship poll in Sokoto. Politicians scare residents with toxic campaigns. You also have the ACF to Buhari here says, Naira redesign policy can damage your credentials. Death toll in southern Kaduna attack rises to 17. And on the footnote there, we have 10.6 million Nigerians used cannabis last year, says NAFDAC. Lagos accounts for 2,000 stunted, 200,000 wasted children, says UNICEF. And finally, cashew scientists, others develop mosquito repellent fabric. And these are some of the stories on Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, the next paper we're looking at is the Guardian newspaper, and it carries this major story on the front page. Cash crunch. Economy sheds 20 trillion naira as policy weakens productivity, SMEs. And it comes with riders here that says, NECA says small businesses going into extinction. NLC, government undermining productivity. CPPE calls on Buhari to intervene. Food factories shut down, lose billions. And we use our wages to buy money for transport fare, says factory workers. Still on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, towards the bottom there, Tinubu APC leaders meet lawmakers-elect in Aso Rock amidst calls for Adamu's resignation. And African techies, diaspora community meet in Silicon Valley for Addis 23. Moving towards the top of the front page there, below the masthead, ACF warns Buhari, says, don't stoke nationwide unrest with Naira policy. And Atiku's aide knocks Wike for deceiving PDP governors. That story can be found on page 3. Talking about security now, terrorists kill police, 16 civilians in Zamguan Kataf. And switching back to politics, Rhodes Viva assures marginalized Lagos residents of better deal. That can be found on page 4. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Guardian newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the leadership newspaper next. And we have the lead story here. Rex to brief INEC chairman on Beaver's reconfiguration today. Upload of presidential results suffers glitches on IREV. APC groups warn against planned protests by Labour Party supporters, says it's an invitation to crisis. We also have more stories. U.S. bank collapse may affect financial inflows, jobs in Nigeria. We have Senate President Tinubu APC leaders move to placate Christians in Southeast. More stories. Syrup faults planned shutdown of broadcast stations. Repentant terrorists, 36 others arrested for drug trafficking. And first Nigerian female senator Franca Afegwa dies at 79. These are some of the stories on leadership.
Next, we'll take a look at the Nigerian Tribune, and it carries this major story on the front page. Governorship poll. Lagos, Oyo, Rivers, Kaduna, Delta, 8 others are key battle states. And rider here that says photo finish races expected in Sokoto, Nasarawa, Akwa Ibom, Benue, Kano. Details of that can be found on page 22. Still on the front page of the Tribune, train bus accident. Lagos Hospital discharged 21 more patients, total now 53. And switching back to politics, presidential poll, we hope courts will work so that we don't hit the streets. That is according to the Labour Party. South-south, southeast, northwest in race to succeed Lawan. As a rider here that says APC, NWC, Tinubu open discussion with new lawmakers today. At the very top of the front page there, 17 corpses found after bandits attack community in Kaduna. 24-hour curfew imposed in 4 villages. And Naira redesign, comply with Supreme Court ruling to avert unrest, ACF advises Buhari. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
All right, now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Governors give Malami Emefiele Tuesday ultimatum to obey Supreme Court. We have writers that says failure to comply will lead to contempt charge Tuesday. Zamfara says Zamfara AG. Rivers, Kogi, Ondo, Ekiti, ACF, Mbaka knocks Buhari as CBN faces fresh suit. Old Naira rejection spreads. Reports say 20 trillion Naira lost to CBN cash mop-up. And we have more stories. Anger as gunmen kill 35 in Katsina and Kaduna. Details on pages 4 and 5. Sacked lecturer. Senate threatens to stop UI funding. And it's a pictorial there of a lady who the dad says the daughter was preparing for masters in UK before the train crash that actually happened in Lagos. Sad one there. May her soul rest in peace. We also have at the top of the page there, Beavers reset ends today. INEC promises results transmission. No going back on nationwide protest, says Labour Party. And DHQ mum as Nigeria drops in global military ranking. We have just beside the nameplate there, Adamu's fate, NAS leadership, top agenda as senators elect meet Tinubu. And these are some of the stories on the Punch newspaper.
Next, we'll take a look at the national economy, and it carries this major story on the front page. Naira scarcity, e-payments failure compounds Nigerians' woes. And comes with riders here that says persistent hiccups discredit 100 billion Naira digital investment claims. Financial transactions worst hit, and hackers on the prowl latch on to situation to inflict pains. That is the major story on the front page of National Economy. Other stories there, farmers set agenda for Tinubu, that can be found on page 22. And Bivas IRF's disappointment and the way forward, that can be found on page 17. At the very bottom of the page there is making payments digitally worth the wait. Now that is a story that can be found on the National Economy. Now these are the major stories on the front page of National Economy newspaper this morning.
All right, on Business Day here we have the lead story that says Old Naira, Buhari's silence deepens Nigeria's plans. And we have Nigerian tech firms face minimal impact of SVB collapse. And an explainer here saying or asking, should CBN determine bank directors' tenure? We also have the big story that talks about stocks defy election risks as local investors control deals. Market outlook hangs on Tinubu's reforms. PFAs curb equity exposure in search of low risks assets. Now, Nigeria lags 5 fastest growing African economies. Details on page 38. And these are some of the stories on Business Day newspaper. And then with that, we're done reading out some of the stories on the front page of the dailies today. But before anything else, let's actually talk about the lead story here on Daily Trust newspaper and the fact that it's been 48 days after, and Buhari's committee has failed to end petrol scarcity. Now, this petrol scarcity, especially in the FCT, keeps coming and going, appearing and disappearing. This time, nobody has said anything. You know, the presidency is mum, marketers are mum, everybody is mum. Nobody's saying anything as to why the fuel scarcity has resurfaced. And this is in addition to the cash crunch that everyone is actually going through right now.
Well, basically, I think they've run out of things to say concerning the fuel scarcity. I mean, like, they've given every excuse that they think they might be able to give. They've pointed accusing fingers at each other, blaming the NNPC, blaming the marketers, independent marketers, blaming major ones, NNPC coming into the fold, federal government saying its own. So I think they've all run out of things to say, and we've actually run out of things to hear or to actually believe. You understand? So I think a lot of Nigerians are just taking it as it comes. There's no fuel, you go, you queue. If you get it, you get it. No matter how much you buy it, if you're able to get it, then you get it. Because really, this committee was set up to end fuel scarcity. That was what we were told. It was coming with a silver bullet to actually end fuel scarcity. Unfortunately, they didn't have a gun. They just have the bullet, unfortunately for them. And we're still facing the same situation. So the committee is basically just there. It was names on a paper, because nothing is there on the ground for anyone to see, because things are getting from bad to worse.
Yeah, I'm actually imagining what a common man faces, you know. For example, there's no cash, and for you to actually go from point A to point B, especially if you don't have access to, you know, let's say these e-taxi platforms, you know, like Uber and Bolt,
which are expensive,
very, very expensive, by the way, and
so
you need to, you know, take along. All right, you don't have the cash, and with the fuel scarcity, probably the fares have actually increased. You're not even having the cash. How are you even supposed to pay? You have so many people trekking to work just to make ends meet. What time do they get to work? How do they become productive after trekking for so long?
Yeah, well, that's why we're seeing headlines here saying that productivity has actually gone down, because a lot of people find it difficult to even get to work. Most people spend their times either in fuel queues or queues at the ATM looking for cash. So definitely productivity will go down, and that is what we're seeing right now. So I think as it is right now, this policy has done more harm than good. Maybe these are teething problems that may ease with time, but unfortunately, even the digital payment platforms are not helping matters. Yeah, you understand? You have people making transfers. Exactly. You have people making transfers. You get debited. The person who you're sending the money to does not get it, and it takes a very long time before it is reversed, or you have to go to the bank and start making complaints. And we all know how rowdy the banks are right now, because everybody is looking for cash. So it's just a compilation of lots and lots of problems for Nigerians at this particular time.
You also have people risking their lives standing on the roads to hitchhike, which is really, really not...
Because they don't have a choice.
Exactly.
So there's a problem.
But then when you fall into bad hands, what happens?
But if you do have a choice, then if you had a choice, you will not do that. Unfortunately, people that do that do not have a choice. You probably working somewhere whereby I'm definitely sure you cannot trek from your house to the office.
Definitely not.
So that is the thing. So you have to find an alternative. If you don't have cash, you can't make transfers, then how do you get to work? Definitely you hitchhike, and you hope for the best.
And more people actually seem to believe it's because the election is still on. That's why once the elections are done,
everything will magically disappear.
There'll be clash. There'll be availability of cash.
It's always good to hope for the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, so that's something that you can reach out for. So you say, okay, fine, let's go through this period. Hopefully, after the elections, everything will stabilize. So you give yourself some hope to go through.
Okay, all right. Now let's move on to more stories. We also have death toll in southern Kaduna and even Katsina. You know, there was a terrorist attack just not too long ago, and it's really, really sad, considering the fact that a lot of people thought that the security or the insecurity issue has actually died down. It has reduced drastically, but we're seeing more of these cases actually coming up, especially after the presidential election.
You know, there was a reduction in the lead up to the election.
There was a question,
and,
was it a...
Yeah, okay. that's what I'm getting to, and that's where a lot of people actually thought that, okay, fine, a lot of attention has been diverted to the elections, and of course to politics, and these things are still happening, but they were underreported because all of the attention was focused on the presidential election. Well, that could be the case, and right now, since the presidential election has come and gone, and there's no more news, that's making the headlines as well. But I would like to believe that the incidents are on decline, but still a lot of people, a lot of lives were actually lost within these couple of days in Kaduna and Katsina, and it's really disheartening when you read stories like that. I mean, like we've talked about stories like that for a very long time, and it's still coming up, it's still happening. It's just quite unfortunate.
Really. All right, let's take a look at City and Crime page, pages 20 and 21 of Daily Trust newspaper. And we have A story here, families of slain police officers in Kogi get 15.9 million naira. We have another one that says FCT minister condoles Yaba chiefdom over chief's death. Immigration hands over 11 trafficking victims to NAPTIP. Center calls for establishment of community networks to bridge digital gap. We have 2 arrested over rape of deaf teen girl in Nasarawa. Really sad one there. And you can actually see a picture of her identifying her rapists. We have ex-Boko Haram fighter, chief, 35 others arrested for drug trafficking. NSCDC parades 2 kidnappers in Ekiti. Police arrest 4 fraudsters over 3.5 million naira in Edo State. And on quick read, we have teenager arrested for killing man in Oyo. Guard nabbed over death of maid in Lagos. An estate agent charged with defrauding tenant 400,000 naira. And these are some of the stories on City and Crime this morning. All right, so let's take a look at more of this. There's this similar story on City and Crime that talks about the ex-Boko Haram fighter, chief, 35 others arrested for drug trafficking. But then, you know, before we do that, we'll take a quick breather and we'll be back in a bit. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that look at the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
That's correct. It's good to see you.
But in a situation where you find that look at the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, welcome back. It's still Daybreak on Trust TV, and we're taking a look at the front pages of the newspapers, reviewing some of the headlines, and of course getting some in-depth analysis as to what makes the stories behind the stories. And of course, right now we have our newspaper reviewer in the house talking about Mukhtar Suleiman, who's a public affairs analyst, and he joins us right here in the studio to discuss the headlines. Welcome.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. You're looking bright and sharp this morning.
Well, I'm drinking water and minding my business.
Yeah, well, that just says you have cash.
Oh, no, if you do that, no, please don't. The FCC is watching. I don't have disclaimer out there, please.
All right, well, welcome to Daybreak this morning. Well, before we get to the cash issue, let's talk about the major story on the front page of the Daily Trust. Back a couple of days back, there was this furore about a committee being set up by the president to end fuel scarcity. It came in with there was lots of fanfare, and people were saying lots of things about the committee and its constitution, and of course the mandate that it had. Well, 48 days later, we're still here.
It's quite very unfortunate that this is happening now, because I would recall that one of the top lines that the president campaigned with in 2019 was that fuel scarcity is a thing of the past. Queues. the way we deteriorated back to 2014 is amazing. It's so amazing. The past 1 year has really been really been good for this administration, and this is their last lap, and they've not maintained the consistency to the end. So almost everything that they sort of claimed that they have brought to the Nigerian fore has actually deteriorated significantly. You see that from insecurity and how it has affected farmers, and it has affected the train station, which was something that we're very proud of. You see that from the fuel queues that are coming up. I queued up last week for almost 6 hours and still didn't get fuel. So it's really sickening. It's really sickening how this has really come back again, and it's as if it's back to stay. The question, what we need to ask, and what the government needs to be a bit open is, are you removing the fuel subsidy? If you're removing the fuel subsidy, because to the best of my knowledge and what I gather, anyway, the federal government has not paid transporter subsidies. So that's why moving fuel around has been a bit difficult. So if they're removing the fuel subsidy, what does that mean for the country? Like I've always said, I don't have a problem with the removal of fuel subsidy. Just make sure that there's stable power, so that I don't have to buy fuel at premium price for me to power my generator. So that's the very important part. So I think most people need to do, the government needs to be a little bit more forward
and transparent.
And more transparent in how they are actually handling this, because it's as if they think like if they ignore it long enough, it will go away. So, and it's not. So I think they need to do something, because we've not heard any statement from the president about it. The few times president have given speeches, it has never been to address this particular issue as well. So we actually need to do more about that.
Okay, talking about the cash crunch, a lot of traders are finding it difficult to accept the old Naira notes, despite the Supreme Court's ruling that, the old Naira notes still remain legal tender till the end of the year. What's your take on this? Because according to Business Day, they're saying that Buhari's silence deepens Nigerians' pains. You can't even get the new Naira notes, not top of the old ones.
Yeah, it's a bit disheartening, because the new Naira note was, I for one was a strong advocate for the new Naira note. The redesign and everything, I felt it was going to be good for us. But like Nigeria, it was actually supposed to be very good for us. But like everything we do in this country, there was a poor implementation of the policy, and that really affected the impact it has on the economy. MSMEs are suffering significantly because of this poor implementation of the policy, but there has been some upside. There have been a lot of banking the unbanked. That has really happened, because if you want to do business, you're not serious if you don't have an account now. You have to accept transfer one way or the other, unless your goods are actually going to suffer. So I think on that front, which is actually a good thing, so that at least we can easily control money in circulation. I feel like eventually, someday in the far future, we might see the impact of this. I don't know what that will mean yet. But in the front of, on the fore of the Supreme Court ruling, I've had a lot of debates with my friends who are lawyers about what that means, because the Constitution is not ambiguous about the executive arm of government's legitimate right to control fiscal policy. That's what the CBN Act says, that the CBN governor has that. So what the Supreme Court is holding is the part that says they need to give significant notice. So the question of whether from October last year to February this year is significant notice. That is where the litigation is. Because how do you translate what significant notice is when you're going to do Naira redesign? Why is it that it is now? Because before now, usually there's a lot of time. That's on one hand. Secondly, a lot of people forget that they redesigned 100 Naira very recently. And the old one is still in circulation. I remember I got it as change in Lagos some weeks ago. So it's still in circulation. So why? Of course, if you want to discuss the Naira redesign policy, you have to discuss it from two angles: the economic implication and the political implication, because there are some political nuances around the conversation that has been had about the Naira redesign. So the problem with it currently for me is that the political angle has actually trumped the economic angle. And right now, it's more or less like a pissing contest between the federal government, the state government, and the Nigerian populace, because now pride is now in it. The president is seeing that, well, I can't speak for him anyway, but my own deduction is that he is finding it a tad difficult to come back and come and retract his words that he gave some days ago. So it's a bit, I don't know, it has gotten to that point where pride is now at the fore of the conversation. Now it's almost as if people don't care They don't really care about how it's really affecting each and everyone. I've not had Naira for 2 weeks or 3 weeks now. I had
but lots of people actually are making the argument that okay, this only affects 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes, and fine. Well, they are saying that if the CBN really wants to make things easier for people, why not mint the lower denominations? The 100 Nairas, there, the 50 Nairas, there, the 20 Nairas, there, because really, what do you need? You don't need large amounts of cash to do whatever it is you want to do. Most of the transactions you do, they involve large amounts of cash. You can do it electronically, all right? But you want to buy sugarcane by the roadside. You need 100 Naira, 150, maybe 200. So why, a lot of people are making that argument, why isn't the CBN minting the lower denominations?
I think, I'm not going to speak for the CBN, but this is my own personal opinion anyway. It comes down to what is the worth of that 100 Naira. Really, what can it buy for you in the market? If I'm holding $100, the highest denomination of the American dollar is $100. If I'm holding $100, invariably I'm holding about 70-something thousand Naira. The gap between a Naira and a dollar is so wide that if you save 1 Naira every day, you still don't have $1 at the end of the year, which is sad. So it is something that we need to actually look at how can we do price control to ensure that our currencies have more value. But of course, one of the upside, I think, of this new Naira redesign policy and why they should mint the upside of minting the lower denomination would be that moving cash in large chunk around becomes quite difficult. You hardly would see someone moving $1 million in 100 Naira dollar bills. It's going to be very difficult for you to do that. So because of that, it's something that is that we might want to look. But the question is, you have to also look at our own dynamics as a people, a culture, our own culture as a people. How do we even understand the economy to start with? To see that, there's a role that we have to play to ensure that these things actually fall in place the way they should be. So I think these are so many things that I don't think there was a proper implementation plan by the CBN, because for every implementation plan, I have designed strategies for organizations. When you design a strategy for maybe my field is communications. When you design a strategy, is a part where you do contingencies, where if this strategy does not work, tentatively, because you do an audience profile analysis, and I want to believe that the CBN has the capacity to do that, being the apex economic body of the country. So when you do an audience profile analysis and you build a persona about who Nigerians are, they should have foreseen this and have measures to react, so that they are not being reactive, rather they are being proactive. So they will know that if this happens, this is what we do. When this happens, because these things are actually something that anybody who has stayed in Nigeria for at least 20 years would have guessed that this is how Nigerians will react to this policy when it comes out. These are how the politicians will react to the. You do your own political economy analysis. You ensure that every other person who are key actors in the PEA have they have their own parts in the audience profile analysis and how you react to them when these things come up, because you can't do them in isolation. This is a national policy.
So basically, CBN watched the implementation.
Honestly, they really did. That's the best way I can put it.
Okay, a question a lot of people are actually asking now is the idea behind the whole policy is to mop up cash from the economy, the economy and all that. But now that the Supreme Court has actually ruled, is the CBN supposed to inject the cash they've mopped up back? Do you understand? Are they expected to inject it back into the economy so it can recirculate? That's the question a lot of people are asking. And then on the Nation newspaper, they're saying businesses are trying to stay afloat, so they're adopting new tactics to stay afloat in the midst of the cash crisis. And then this really interesting one that I really want to get your take on is the story of they say foreign portfolio investments post first gain in 5 years. First gain in 5 years.
That's interesting. I've not read the entirety of that story, but is it as a result of the policy? I think that's another question. It's not. So I've not really read the whole entirety of the story, so it might be very difficult for me to have an opinion about that at this point, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to more stories. Now we have. Let's go back to elections.
Oh yeah.
The election is actually not over. We still have, the state governorship and state assembly elections this weekend. Now, Beaver's reset ends today, and INEC has promised results transmission.
I hope they live up to it, because we heard that promise 1,001 times. But the problem is, for me, I've always said that the INEC chairman and its team missed the opportunity to go down in history as the body and the committee that conducted one of the best elections in contemporary Nigeria. Not transmitting results was a very big flop on their side, because it was the revolutionized aspect of the general elections. Now, what does that mean for the governorship election? I don't know, but more interests were staked for the presidential elections. I've always said I can't wait for the litigations and when they start, and what that's going to mean for the Nigerian population, because it's going to be really, really interesting to actually see what the cases they're going to bring to the fore. It's for the first time they're going to air post-election, they're going to air election laundries outside, and then we're all going to watch it and see, because there's some kind of conversations that go on during elections that we don't know about. So I'm hoping that this litigation will bring them out, so that we can actually know what happens behind the closed doors when these things happen. I'm looking forward to it significantly. But hopefully that when the gubernatorial elections would be different. I want to speak to Nigerians out there. Subnational government is one of the most significant aspects of our democracy as a country, because if laws and litigations are made at federal level, if they're not domesticated at state level, then those people in those states will not enjoy the dividends of those policies. So you have to be very keen on who your governor is and who your members of your state houses are, because these guys are the lawmakers for your state at subnational level. And if they don't, even when they domesticate, how they domesticate, because we see the Child Rights Act, and it has been adulterated in so many ways in so different states. And because of that, some states, despite the fact that age for consent, for example, at national level would be 18, some states say it's 13, some states say it's 14. So, and we're still struggling with the VAP Act and all of that. So it is very important that people pay attention to subnational government.
But unfortunately, that is not the case, because a lot of people seem to be placing more emphasis on the presidential and national assembly elections rather than the governorship. Well, just talking about that now, let's not move away from INEC and, of course, the electronic transmission of results issue. A lot of people are of the opinion that what brought about all this rancor after the presidential election was INEC boxing themselves into a corner by making the electronic transmission results the centerpiece of their presentation when it came to the election. I mean, like, they were the ones who made all the hype concerning this. Are we seeing a repeat of it? Because right now they are saying that it will happen again. Are we seeing a repeat of it?
And that's why, if you notice, when she read the news, I didn't feel confident about it. INEC set its own standard for itself and then botched it by themselves again all over. So I don't know how to comprehend that or wrap my head around it. Communication is a very important part of management. When they knew, and let's assume that it is not because of any form of sabotage, let's assume that what they said was that there's a technical issue. The INEC chairman or the technical team cannot tell me that they didn't know like 24 hours before, or at least when the process started, they were aware. As at 4-5 p.m. that day, people were not as agitated. People were still calm and waiting. So I think that was the best time for them to put out a statement. That's how you talk to people sometimes. For everybody I manage communications for, I tell them, that's how you talk to people sometimes, that actually you might not be able to talk to everybody, but at least a significant part will understand the logic. If the INEC chairman had come out and said, give a preliminary speech and go into, unfortunately, we know that this was the one thing we wanted to do, but it's sad that our technical team are telling us now that our servers are not capable enough to receive all the results as they come in at the same time. We know that this is a fault on our side and we're working to rectify it, but in order not to prolong the process, we want to go back to manual. This thing. We are sorry. We'll try as much as possible to see how we can come back, but as it stands right now, this would be a very difficult. Simple. Sometimes that might speak to people, and get these things, but they allowed people to fill in the loopholes themselves, and which gave room for a lot of fake news, misinformation, and disinformation, which is really, really bad. It speaks really poorly of the commission.
Yeah, well, we do hope that INEC will get its act together for the governorship election coming.
Hopefully.
All right. Well, Mukhtar Suleiman, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning, and of course your perspective on the headlines.
Thank you so much.
All right. And if you do have cash, please. All right. So on this note, we're going to wrap up the newspaper review on Daybreak this morning. Do stay with us. We'll be back at top of the hour to continue with the show. Do stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that look at the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and I'm Dashan Husseina Usman.
Yes, it is Trust TV's Daybreak, and I'm Ibrahim Yusuf. It is top of the hour, 8 o'clock, and of course we've been rolling on the show this morning. Thanks for staying with us.
All right, let's take a look at the highlights at this hour. Curbing malaria. KASU scientists, others develop mosquito repellent fabric.
And Zamfara insecurity, police rescue 14 kidnapped victims.
School poisoning, more than 100 arrested in Iran.
All right, now let's take a look at the details. Professor Zakari Laden of the Department of Pure and Applied Chemistry, Kaduna State University, and other co-researchers have developed a mosquito repellent fabric. Now, in a statement by the Public Relations Officer of KASU, Adamu Bargo, in Kaduna on Sunday, the institution said it was part of the efforts aimed at ending the malaria scourge. Bargo said that the product was the outcome of a more than 27 million naira research grant under the 2020 National Research Fund of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. He said that Laden, the principal researcher with the specialty in organic and synthetic chemistry, conducted the research alongside 3 others. He added that the nightgowns were produced from the fabric rather than the continuous use of chemical insecticides or mosquito-treated nets with synthetic chemicals.
All right, away from that story, The Zamfara Police Command has dislodged a bandits camp and rescued 14 kidnapped victims who had spent 68 days in captivity. Now, this is contained in a statement issued in Gusau on Saturday by the police public relations officer in the state, SP Muhammad Shehu. According to him, police tactical operatives in conjunction with the vigilante group, while on a mop-up operation near Munghaye Forest, successfully dislodged some bandits camp belonging to one recalcitrant bandit kingpin, popularly known as Dogo Sele. The victims informed the police detectives that on 1st January 2023, at about 11 p.m., a large number of suspected bandits armed with sophisticated weapons stormed Ungwer Mangoro and Gidang Maidawa villages in Gusau local government area and abducted the victims to their camp where they spent 68 days in captivity. He said the State Commissioner of Police, Kolo Yusuf, has congratulated the victims for regaining their freedom and reassured of the command's continuous commitment to protect lives and property of the citizens.
Meanwhile, in Iran, the government has announced that more than 100 arrests nationwide have been made over the mystery poisoning of thousands of schoolgirls, charging that the unidentified alleged perpetrators may have links with hostile groups. Now, in the wave of cases since late November, schoolgirls have suffered fainting, nausea, shortness of breath and other symptoms after reporting unpleasant odors from school premises, with some being treated in the hospital. State media reported late on Saturday that the Interior Ministry had announced the arrests over the suspected poison attacks in more than 200 schools, which have sparked fear and anger among pupils and their parents. Among those arrested are people with hostile motives and with the aim of instilling terror in the people and students. The ministry added that from the middle of last week, the number of incidents in schools has decreased significantly, and there have been no reports of sick students. The statement pointed at possible links to an Albania-based exiled Iranian opposition group that Tehran considers a terrorist organization, that is the People's Mujahideen of Iran.
A really sad one there, but then with that we wrap up highlights at this hour. We'll move on to more packages. As the rainy season approaches, youths in Benue have been urged to engage in agriculture to earn a livelihood and assist others in Nigeria's economy. Jimmy Adzande reports that residents believe farming is a big business and should not be taken for granted. His report.
It is the season of politics in Nigeria as political parties and supporters across board tighten up for the governorship election on Saturday the 18th. However, experts in the agricultural sector want youths across the country to own farms for their benefits and the growth of the economy.
My call to youths is that we need to join hands together to build the economy of this nation. It's not just about politics. When the politicians are doing their own, the youths also have to be equipped to support the policies. Governments and business owners or entrepreneurs come together to massively encourage the economy. So we are calling you to come into the agricultural sector. This season is almost upon us. Let them get farmlands. There are inputs, there are many credit facilities that can encourage and help them to carry out the farming, so that at the end of the season, they'll have something to show for themselves, for their community, and for the nation at large.
Others said with agricultural produce, the youth can feed their families after politicking. Instead of stipends from political masters, the youths are advised to seek for agricultural incentives from the political leaders to engage in large-scale farming.
My advice to young people is that they should go back to farm because this is the time for farming, and we need the young people. In the farm, we need young people more than the way the politicians they need them, because after politics, we have to eat. So we need to take them back to farm so that they will be able to produce what even the politicians they will eat. If youth happens to know the value of farming, they will know that even the politician depends on this farming. The reason why you are following politicians should be that this politician may help you, assist you in getting farm inputs, assist you in making policies that will be favorable for you to farm.
The experts maintained that the economic benefits of farming are enormous and should be taken serious by both the government and the youth population.
I told the young coming youth that there is no business that can give you money like farming. Politics is a waste of time to myself. I believe in farming more than any other business, because there is no business that will give you what farm will give you, as far as I'm concerned.
There have been calls for food security in Benue State, reputed as the food basket of the nation. The experts said more hands are needed to mitigate the food shortage last famine season caused by flood disaster in Benue, amongst other states in the country.
And to politics now, Katsina State specifically, where political alignment is getting intense in the state ahead of next Saturday's governorship and state assembly elections. Abdullahi Ahmadi reports that some political parties are aligning or merging with the two major political parties in the state to either retain or wrestle power. His report.
It is obvious that the PDP and the APC are the major political parties struggling to make it to Muhammadu Buhari House come March 18th. Though the People's Redemption Party, PRP, is curiously following the turn of events with keen interest, having presented a credible person who many believed is in the contest to win the election. The three candidates of PRP, PDP, and APC continue to re-strategize to bridge all gaps ahead of the next Saturday's elections. Part of these strategies is how APC was able to persuade a faction of PDP under the former governor Ibrahim Shema to support Dikko Radda during the next Saturday's elections. In the same vein, chieftains of NNPP and Accord Party collapsed their structures to support the ruling APC in Katsina State. We at the NNPP were into this alliance with the governorship candidate of APC, Dr. Dikko Radda, to support him win the next Saturday's election. Katsina State requires an educated person to take it to the next level. That is why we support Dr. Dikko Radda, and he will win the next Saturday's election, God willing. Similarly, the Labour Party just recently collapsed all its structures in support of the PDP governorship candidate, Senator Yakubu Lado Damariki.
After thorough deliberation, discussions, and consultations, we were able to come up with distinguished Senator Yakubu Lado Damariki of the People's Democratic Party as the best candidate for the forthcoming election in Katsina State.
Democracy gives room for multi-party system, but that the campaign teach or try to show that we want to become a one-party system, especially here in Katsina. So that one-party system does not help the democracy. Does not help. But if you want progress, or if you want benefited more from the government, so there is need for us to have an opposition.
This is coming at a time the APC and the PDP are trading words, accusing another of planning to rig the forthcoming elections in the state. Abdullahi Ahmadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
All right, away from that story, with the postponement of the governorship and state houses of assembly elections, many political parties have intensified their campaigns, while some collapsed their structures to join others. Now, in Adamawa State, the one-week extension creates chance to the main leading political parties headed by Governor Amadu Umaru and Senator Aisha Benani to receive defectors to their camps. Silas Lawang files on this report.
The one-week extension of the election by the Independent National Electoral Commission has provided an opportunity for the parties to make further effort to win the hearts of the masses. It will be recalled the Labour Party governorship candidate in Adamawa, Umar Mustafa, joined the All Progressive Congress to help its candidate win the election. Few days later, People's Democratic Party Central Zone aspirant Abubakar Ibrahim Gombe also joined the Binani scam. They both call on their supporters to unite and ensure victory is for Binani.
I am specifically saying all my supporters, all means all, all my supporters should come out en masse and vote for Senator Aisha Ahmed Binani.
It has always been my desire for this, my brother from my uncle, to join me and support me in actualizing my ambition. And today is a day come true. And asking what value will this add to this journey? Certainly, I'm sure whoever sees this combination today, I'm sure the opposition will be shaken. They know that APC.
For APM, ABGA, NRM, ZLP, ADP, and APP gubernatorial candidates, moving to Governor Ahmadu Umar Fintri's camp is best choice. While on his part, the Adamawa State Action Alliance gubernatorial candidate Suleiman Tahir vehemently debunked rumors going round of his stepping down for Governor Ahmadu Umar Fintri.
And I hereby state vehemently, unequivocally, that I'm still in the race for the governorship of Adamawa State. And I will never, and I have no intention whatsoever to align with any other party.
Now, both APC's Aisha Binani and Governor Ahmadu Umar Fintri of the People's Democratic Party have been visibly involved in the campaign in several places, including churches, markets, and streets, trying to woo as many voters as possible. Salis Lawan, Trust TV News, Yola.
Now, it is the responsibility of government to provide infrastructure to make life meaningful for its citizens, and it is equally the citizens' responsibility to protect the infrastructure to provide for their welfare. Now, people, however, often vent their anger by destroying public infrastructure, and Kabir Lawa speaks to Abuja residents on whose responsibility it is to protect public facilities.
Of public infrastructure is the sole responsibility of government. But citizens vandalize public facility like electrical installations, rail track, or manhole for selfish reasons. A cross-section of people that spoke to Trust TV News said the destruction of public property can be attributed to ignorance, hunger, poverty, and frustration.
My advice is to the young people, please, no matter what, we shouldn't resort to violence. Let's not destroy public properties, be it government or private. Please, there are better ways to channel our grievances. So it is better with dialogue than destruction, because it will still cost us to recover from those destructions.
Government does not respect the rule of law, and we don't think you don't expect any common youth out there to come and respect your own rule, that you don't respect the rule of law. Me, on my own, I always talk about I look at the positive ends of things a lot. You understand me? But government of today does not know if the youth are existing or not. You understand? Imagine if you can call the president of Nigeria to come to court and he said nothing like court. The Supreme Court will give judgment based on our naira to be legal, and the government will say nothing. So we don't respect rule of law, so we don't expect anybody to respect the government.
Some said the youth should channel grievances through the appropriate authority and not to resort to destruction or looting of public property.
Do the right thing. No job. All our foreign jobs are recruiting to Ghana. Everything, mobile, Toyota, oh Ghana. So what are we doing?
This is not far from the reality of the changing climate and the heat wave. You know, all of this make people to behave differently. Let's stay calm and trust something better will happen in the nearest future.
Respondents implore the youths to be vanguard of public assets, calling on government to provide job opportunities for them to be more productive. Kabir Lowell, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right, well, with that, we will take a quick breather, and when we come back, we'll move on to the first discussion. Stay with us. Hi, thank you for staying with us. It's still a Daybreak on Trust TV. Now we'll move on to our discussion. Now, for the first time in many years, the forthcoming governorship elections appears unpredictable. This is as some state governors seeking re-election or who have positioned their preferred successors are in a panic mode ahead of the March 18 governorship elections. Now, should the trend which played out in the February 25th presidential election repeat itself in the gubernatorial election, some state governors may not get a second term or produce their successors. Now, a probability breeding fear and anxiety in some of them. Now, right here in the studio, we have Jide Ojo and Emmanuel Njoku, who were observers in the just concluded presidential and National Assembly elections, here with us in the studio, and they're both joining us to talk about this particular issue. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. All right, good morning, gentlemen. Jide Ojo, let me start with you. We just heard the intro that was actually read, and we saw what happened in the presidential elections. Some state governors, sitting state governors, actually lost their bids to return to the Senate. Some of them were not able to deliver their states for their parties and all that. And now that's the anxiety that's been bred for the governorship election. Do you think it is right to actually feel that particular anxiety? Judging by what
very apt, very right. I've said time and again, politics is a game of intrigues. Politics is not mathematics. It's like football. Yesterday, Man U struggled to 0-0 with Southampton, which is a battle. I mean, it tells you. Look at each time I watch Premiership, just those who are gambling, I don't know how they manage to gamble, because the game that you are already giving, this is a top four, now this is top four, this is a bottom, so you just give it to the top four, that this game. But that is the nature and character of politics. You never can. I mean, I was studying the outcome of the senatorial election in Abia. 3 different parties produced the 3 senators, but did you know that the party that won overall is even different
from the ones that produced the senators?
Yes. So you find out that voters are not very sophisticated. No, in Abia, Labour has won, APC has won, APGA has won. Then Labour won overall. Yes. So what I'm saying is that in an election where you got 3 ballots simultaneously, it's not like you voted at different times. So somebody is able to identify APGA and identify Labour for different positions. Somebody is able to identify APC and Labour and APGA for different positions. It tells you that underrate Nigerian voters at your own peril. Look at the table shaking situation in Lagos. That a relatively unknown quantity is giving the governor so much headache that he has turned to hairdresser, turned to evangelist, he's now going everywhere on the streets laughing, shaking, and you wonder, these are the same people that takes voters for granted. You will never see them on the street. They do the rallies, they invite top-rated musicians, and then they dance for 3 hours, speak for 30 minutes, and everybody disperse. Now they are going door to door. Now they are going church to church. They are going mosque to mosque. They are talking to opinion molders. They are not. So everybody, I mean, at the last count, the senatorial upset was seven state governors losing out. 7. It's unprecedented. In 2019, we were talking about 3 or 4. But even Dan Kwambo that lost in 2019 has won his senatorial election now. Meanwhile, he lost as a sitting governor in 2019. So you find that it's not curious, it's not unprecedented. It just goes to show that if you fail to perform, you'll be punished. Whether as a godfather, whether as an incumbent, it confers no undue advantage on you again. It depends on the mood of the people. And you could see this obedient revolution and the Kwankwasia revolution that has put the 2023 election in a different geographical map. So much so that, look at Kwankwasia, they just held down Kano. They don't care. In neighboring Jigawa, you would think that NNPP does not exist. But this is the same state that was split into two. You will have thought that the Kwankwasia movement will spread to Kaduna, to Jigawa. But it has no impact in others. But the man held down Kano. That out of 1.49 million votes that NNPP has in this presidential election, 997,000 of it came from just Kano. And you can see the obedient movement. People who have no money to campaign were just cruising on the name of Peter Obi to win election. So it's good for our democracy, and it shows that though severe attempts have been made to discredit the February 25 election, it has produced a lot of pluses, and it has shown the trend on how voters behavior, that voters are not as dull, are not as uninitiated as many of us may want to give them. They are very sophisticated. Even where you are ready to buy votes, they can collect your money and still not vote for you. So money has become not the primary consideration to winning votes. It has become secondary. That money comes, and I mean, look at Benue. Benue, a reverend father that is almost unknown in politics, resigned his ministerial work and went into politics, and is turning the entire place upside down. So it is a cause for worry for politicians, but not a cause for worry for me as a political observer. I think it's a welcome development. All right, so
Mr. Emmanuel, let's talk about the postponement of the elections from last week to this week. Now, a lot of people seem to be disappointed at the rescheduling. Would you say this rescheduling is a mistake or a blessing in disguise?
So let me ask you this. Would it have even been better if INEC felt that the February 25th election, they will have challenges with deployment, and they rescheduled it to give a perfect election, than going ahead to do it on the 25th February and having that level of late deployment, which made us see elections late into the midnight, which caused a lot of young people not to be able to vote, which caused a lot of voter disenfranchisement, which caused a lot of pregnant women, people with disability, elderly people go home and couldn't vote, which also reduced the voting hours. Suppose 6 hours voting hours that Nigerians are supposed to have to vote. So we saw a lot of polling units where polls started by 3, and by 7, because there was no power or no light, they had to close, meaning that they voted for only 3-4 hours, not minding that there were still people on the queue. So my point is, INEC has the powers to postpone election. It is completely in the power of INEC to set the date and sequence of our elections. So if INEC feels for issues of reconfiguring the beavers or for whatever issue they need to postpone the election, they are within their rights to postpone the election. What is important is giving us a good election. And I think, and I support INEC in that election postponement, because the way it was going, we cannot as a country afford to have another bungled election. 25th election has its challenges. But however, I can say, because we observed the election and we saw the pattern of the election, and I can say that this is probably one of the cleanest elections we've had in the history of Nigeria. Well, no, I won't say history of Nigeria, let me say since 1999, because that's the much I know. So if I say history of Nigeria, I wasn't even voting as at then. So let me come back to 1999 till date. Why do I say this? In our election process, where the major gaps are, starts from the party primaries. Then election day process, the biggest gap in our process has always been the part where we did manual accreditation and where you bring in the incidence form. That is where the fraud happens. That was tied at the point of introducing the beavers, which ensures biometric accreditation. That way we'll start seeing the real numbers. And we saw that in the election. Before, you see places like Kano, putting out 4 million votes. Kaduna boasted of 2-3 million votes. The KKK states, Lagos State with close to 7 million registered voters, you'll expect they're going to bring out 4 million votes. But what's the number of votes that came out? Typically, what happens in the past is that after elections happen, the political parties and these people now look at 15% voter turnout is probably what they see, but there are lots of voters, close to 85% ballot papers. They go ahead and do manual, tick all the names on the voter register and come up with very fictitious wrong numbers to show numbers. But in this election, because of beavers, that gap was tied. Now, the biggest challenge in our process again is at the point of result handling and collation. And the worst of this happens at the first level of collation, beyond the polling unit. When you go to the registration area center, collation center, that is where a lot of fraud happens. Now, the introduction of the IREV was supposed to bring transparency to that fraud that happens at the collation center, which is what the IREV has introduced, where the presiding officer is supposed to transmit results from the polling unit. Now, what that is supposed to serve is, as a presiding officer, when I finish at the polling unit and I transmit, by the time the big politicians in that space are putting a gun on the head of the local government collation officer, the person simply will tell them that I can't do anything. These results have already been uploaded. They're already on the INEC server. Everybody is seeing this. That is also the major gap in our result handling. But in that part, I would say that INEC missed it in that part, especially in the presidential election. All that delay that we had in results coming in created the gap. And the politicians, being who they are, they saw an opportunity there which allowed them to be able to, in some places and in some cases, alter results and change numbers. But however, even in their trying to change numbers, like we've seen in some of the results on the IREV, they still maintained within the number of accredited voters. So it's not like business as usual, where you change numbers, only 200 persons voted, but you bring out results showing that 800 persons voted. So even in cases where they try to alter this process, we're able to still maintain. But that's for the presidential. Now, if you look at like my guy here, Jude said, if you look at the results that came out across the country, in the National Assembly, I understand that in the Senate, that 70% of the senators-elect are new senators that are coming into office. And you mentioned something about the governors. In the past, typically, when you see sitting governors running for Senate, it's a one-way victory for them because of the power to be able to influence and, doctor results. But in 2019, you are trying to say that 6 governors, sitting governors, contested for office. Only one person lost in that 2019 election out of I think it's Ajimobi or so Oyo State that lost that election. Now, in this 2023 election, I think about 10 governors or 9 governors ran for Senate. Only 2 sitting governors, only 2 of them were able to succeed. The Ebonyi State governor, Dave Umahi, and Niger State, Sani Bello.
Okay, Sani Bello.
These are the 2 governors. The remaining 9, who typically you would think will win election, the remaining 7 lost election. Of the senators, of the former governors and sitting governors in this election, about 28 of them contested for Senate, which is why we've been saying Senate is going to be a retirement home for our governors. 28 of them contested for this election. Typically, if it was elections as usual, we've seen before, probably all of them would have won. But in this election, we saw only 10 of them win. 18 of them lost. So this speaks to the progress we've made in our electoral process with the introduction of the beavers as it is. So for me, I am happy that INEC postponed this election, so there won't be any excuses, because INEC, in not providing that IREV that is supposed to bring the transparency, lost a chance, missed an opportunity in raising the bar in our process. A lot of first-time voters, not people that just turned 18 years. I know a lot of colleagues who have never voted, but they all voted in this election because the electoral 2022 and the innovations of INEC promised that votes will count. People mostly in their middle class, upper class, the very educated ones, the elites, the urban city dwellers, who don't usually vote a lot, all of them voted because there was an assurance that your votes will count. And that's why they voted. So for me, I felt bad that INEC took Nigerians to this level. But at the point when you shut that door that was supposed to bring transparency so that people can see it and participate and be part of the process, they missed that opportunity. So I wish and I pray that they have postponed the election, that they will get it right in their deployment. That election, you don't start election by 3 p.m. How do you do that? Because in the budget and the costing of election polling unit, there is no cost for generators, there is no budget for voting in the night power, and that's why election starts by 8:30. So that no matter how you stretch it with number of people on the queue after 2:30, you will still finish it when there is still daytime. So we are hoping that the mistakes and the error, if it is cash, even though CBN said they gave INEC all the cash they needed, we hope that they sort it out. If it is about the drivers, the NURT drivers who are supposed to take materials to polling units, we understand that some of them refuse to sleep at the registration area centers, which is supposed to be the norm. And some of them came very late. So whatever issues it is, even with the beavers, we are trusting INEC, like we've always trusted INEC, that they will take advantage of this election and make it very smooth, from deployment to materials being complete, to every process, security personnel doing their own part, then more importantly, Nigerians seeing the results like we saw in Ekiti 2020 governorship election and Osun State governorship election. That is what we expect of INEC. So moving the election to this 18th, for me, is a good thing, if that will give us a very clean election.
All right. Well, a clean election is all we're actually hoping for. So, Jide Ojo, let me come to you now. Yeah, we talked of one of the centerpieces of this election process is the electronic transmission of results. INEC made a very big deal about it in the run-up to the presidential election, and unfortunately, right now, it is proving to be their Achilles heel when it comes to the February 25th elections. We're hearing them now beating those same drums. Are they still boxing themselves into a corner? What happens in a situation whereby with the same thing that happened on February 25th happens again?
God forbid, God forbid bad things. I just hope it won't happen. I mean, they said thunder doesn't strike at the same spot twice. I just hope so. I want to give INEC benefit of doubt, because bungling this March 18 election would just make, I mean, in 2027, people will just say, don't even conduct election. Let's just do communal selection. Okay, Aja, you go out of assembly, and you go. We'll just settle it among ourselves. Because, see, shall I shock you? This election has cost Nigeria 478.6 billion naira. 478.6, and I'm saying this authoritatively. In 2022 budget, they got 305 billion. In 2023 budget, and this is a document I'm in possession of, not hearsay, the statutory transfer to INEC from 2023 budget is 173.6 billion. So if you have close to $500 billion to conduct an election, I read in December 15, 2022, the Punch newspaper said INEC voted 117 billion for security of its cyberspace, portal, website, database, and all of that. 117 billion. These are verifiable figures. So, what excuses have you got? For me, this has gone beyond the, please forgive us. We never meant to. I mean, there should have been different scenarios built. That's why people are so disenchanted that INEC's excuses was becoming very hollow. Because if you voted 117 billion for security of your cyber space, that means you can even bring the best cyber security experts to help you with your systems. So if money wasn't the issue, because I mean, Imad talked about INEC. Did you know that why many of us stuck out our neck for INEC was because, one, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu is the only INEC chairman that have gotten reappointment. So experience wasn't a deficit. He's not a rookie. He has conducted one election previous. So, and this is our 7th. So institutional memory is there. Then you have a legal framework, electoral 2022, that says what's it called? Section 3 sub 3, saying that the funds for the election should be released a year to that election, 1 year to that election. So you got 305 billion in 2022 budget. You did all your procurement. There was no issue of cash deficit as we had in 2019 when the president submitted the budget of 242 billion to the National Assembly in June of 2018, when election was supposed to be in February 2019. In which case, by the time the Bukola Saraki-led Night Assembly, they just received the document, sent it to the Committee on INEC and Electoral Matters, and went on annual recess for 3 months. They came back in September, they passed the budget, and then they start looking for where to get the money. So the National Assembly passed the 242 billion, 189 billion for INEC, and 53 billion for security. And then they said, okay, we've passed this, but where are we sourcing the money? So the president said, we are taking this money from your constituency president. No. Let's take it from MDA. All of these arguments did not arise in 2023. I gave that background so you know where we are coming from. So INEC chairman is not a rookie. He has conducted over almost 200 elections, from general to by-elections between 2019 and 2020. So what went wrong? He has not come out frontally, frankly, to tell us exactly how the 2023 February 25 election was bungled. Even yesterday, when Barrister Festus Okoye Esquire, we are not to call them barrister, when he was speaking on his sister TV station, he just said, we know what happened, and we will do everything to prevent a reoccurrence. What happened? Nigerians want to know exactly what happened. Because that day, I remember they said they arrested some people at Green Street in Matama who allegedly fiddled with the porter. But INEC debunked it and said, no, it's a rumor. So if your system was hacked, let us know. If it was not hacked, if it's an internal sabotage, if it's external, that will have made Nigeria to understand better. But now, you are giving us reassurance, and we have decided to give you benefit of doubt. But I have cautious optimism. Cautious optimism because, you know, me, I've been voting since 1999. But first-time voter, my own children who are turning 18, who just want to experience this, I don't want it to be a nasty experience for them. So when you gave us your words, that election, remember, Ibrahim, this is the first time INEC will start general election at 8:30, official hour. It has always been 8 to 2, 8 to 2. So over the off-cycle election, I think the Osun, they discovered that they were not getting their logistics right. So they decided to say, and this does not need them going to National Assembly or altering any constitution or electoral. This, I will expect that if INEC knows that this persistent challenge of logistics will still rear its ugly head on March 18, let us start at 10. And end by 4. That's still 6 hours, isn't it? So that you know, if your drivers refuse to sleep at rack, even if they come 5 a.m., you can still get your distribution. And if you feel 10 a.m. is too much of a time to start 9. There is no law. It's administrative. Determine the time of election is administrative. INEC has within its power to even say that this election will hold for 8 hours. So all of this advantage, I thought INEC should take of it. But to just be very economical with the truth, to not want to open up to the public, and much as I won't throw the baby with the bathwater, but as I've said on several media platforms, this February 25th election, in spite of the pluses that we have with it, in spite of the substantial compliance that comes with it, it's like somebody that an A student that you know this guy is very brilliant, so you are expecting him to have A in a subject and now score C. C is not a failure. You know, it will make you to have an extra year. But C is different from A that you are. So you didn't even come to B. You now came to C. That is the way I will characterize the February 25th. So I will expect that INEC I mean, they came out on the upper Saturday. After their review, they say, oh, a number of things will be done differently, and there are some of their staff that have been identified as having compromised, and that they should not be allowed to participate in this current one. They should do a refresher training. They should do. Where is the time to do all of that? And you know, the greatest fear I have, Malam Aja, is that INEC does not seem to be in control of his field officers. Many of them have partisan interest as against the provision of Section 8 sub 2, which says that no INEC official should be a member of a party. But we had on good authority that some political party chieftains, you know, lobbied to get their party members into the ad hoc staff. And INEC had to recruit 1.4 million. Did they do any background check to know whether these people are APC loyalists or PDP or Labour Party loyalists? So you have 1.4 million ad hoc staff that you recruited. Your own staff are just 16,500. So you have people. The society has dumped a lot of people on you whom you do not know their background. You don't know their interest. And we know that there is no way an election can be bungled without those external, you know, resources, like the core members, the students of tertiary institutions, even the NURTW people, which we know. Remember that Labour Party went to court in Lagos to say that MC Oluomo must not participate in the distribution of election materials because he is partisan. Everybody knows of his partisanship.
All right.
Let's come back to you, Mr. Emmanuel. Now, with the assurances that INEC has actually given Nigerians about, you know, the governorship elections going to be free, fair, and credible, do you think this has actually instilled confidence in the voters?
Let me say this: we're only going to trust INEC. Because they are given an assurance. So if you follow the pattern of elections, INEC will always give that assurance. Even way back as at 2007, Morris, who gave the same, gave all this assurance. You know, so we've seen INEC chairman back to back, INEC give this assurance. So we're going to trust INEC to follow the Electoral Act, to implement the Electoral Act as is clearly stated. We're also going to trust INEC to do the needful. And to add to what Mayoga said and what you asked, if INEC is putting themselves in a tight corner, INEC saying that they are going to transmit results from polling units, for me, is not an option. It's not a choice. The Electoral Act, Section 60, sub 5, clearly stipulates that the presiding officers shall transfer, you know, results from their polling unit in a way prescribed by INEC. Now, the INEC guidelines, clause 38, clearly stated that the presiding officer shall electronically transfer/transmit results from polling units. So it's not for INEC to choose if they will transmit or if they will not transmit. All they need to do is to get their act right, because they will do the needful. I saw the judgment from the Supreme Court, you know, talking about Section 52, not Supreme Court, rather, the Court of Appeal, talking about Section 52, and completely ignoring Section 60, sub 5, the electoral guideline, and Section 64, subsection 4A and B. And I'm wondering how come they are ignoring this very important part of. See, let me tell you, if you notice this 25th election, the international community, we had over close to 7 or 8 past presidents of different countries. The whole international community, they were all interested in this election because we have the biggest democracy in Africa. I think it was the fourth or fifth biggest democracy in the world. The whole world was interested to see that massive voter register, averaging 93.4 million people. Germany, as much as they had, the whole population of Germany is not even up to 85 million. Not their electorate. The population from 0 to 100 days, people living in Germany. So the whole world is interested to see. And that's why there was a lot of disappointment from both local observers and international observers. So INEC doesn't have a choice than to transmit results from polling units. INEC also doesn't have a choice, as stipulated in Section 65 of the Electoral Act, sub 5, where it states that the collation officer cannot collate and announce results till he must have confirmed that the results brought in are the same, or if there's a discrepancy, that the one that was transmitted electronically supersedes this. So I don't see any space for INEC. So for me, as a citizen, I only have one vote. Sadly, I will not even be voting because I live here in Abuja, because there won't be any election. But for citizens across the country, they must trust INEC with what they've said. And if you look at the election that has, I've looked at the composition of National Assembly, even the APC, the ruling party, doesn't have the 2/3. Do they even have up to 50% of the votes? I don't. Up to 50%?
Yeah. 51, at least the one that has been released, 51 senators. Although that's not up to half. But
but when you look at the Senate and the House of Reps, you will see close to 8 political parties
in House of Reps, 7 in Senate
make up the whole. So it means that even the APC as the majority cannot by themselves, make resolutions. They must find a way to have all the political parties involved. So what this means is, for the people who think that their votes didn't count, they should look at the House of Rep and the senatorial elections and look at how many sitting governors that failed to be re-elected, and look at the number of new entrants into the space that are coming to the National Assembly. When you look at all of this election is even the most important election. Like you hear people say that this is local. This is the part where everybody needs to go out and trust INEC. And in fact, people that didn't vote need to even come out more this time to vote, because most of the laws that affect people the most, comes from your state legislatures. The closest government to the people is your local government and your state government. So these are people that decide mostly what happens to you. The state civil servants in those states, they get paid or they don't get paid, is not the president's responsibility. It is the state responsibilities. Most of the primary school, the education in that state is in the hands of mostly the state government. So this election is very important. And I would expect Nigerians to, in as much as they have these displeasures and these disappointments in INEC handling the IREV, I am giving INEC that benefit of doubt, knowing how important, knowing how much they've raised the awareness of Nigerians to the point of believing that their votes count. This is INEC's chance at proving to Nigerians that votes will count. So I am trusting that they will deliver in this election. I am hoping, and I'm calling on every Nigerian as well to trust and come out more than they even did in the last election and elect their leaders. Because one thing I believe with this election, why I say this election has brought a lot of change to our political culture, is the game has changed. Automatically, like Jide said, it's now citizens who are either rewarding or punishing their political leaders, like we've seen.
As it should be.
As it should be. Do you understand? Okay. So I would expect us to build on what we've seen. It's a process, and we're getting better. We're trusting that the president-elect, when he gets into power, will also, after every election, we'll look at the gaps, and that is what influences and informs electoral reforms. That will even get better than what we already have. So I will strengthen this democracy and strengthen our electoral process.
All right. So we should trust the process and we should trust INEC.
Yes.
Well, we hope we get the best out of this governorship election, and we'll be having a different discussion after it. All right. Emmanuel Njoku, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And Jide, always a pleasure having you on the program.
My pleasure too.
All right. And this is where we're going to wrap it up on Daybreak this morning. We've had so much fun, and of course so much education and enlightenment coming from all the different perspectives that we've had. So why don't we do it all again tomorrow? I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
And I'm Darshan Husseina Usman. Have a wonderful week.